That morning, soft sunlight gently filtered through the window of Ethan Carter's small apartment amidst the bustling city of New York. Ethan woke up earlier than usual, a sense of excitement and happiness filling his chest. Today was his first day working at the tech startup he had dreamed of joining for a long time. He already imagined how the days ahead would be filled with exciting challenges and great success. After sipping his favorite cup of black coffee, Ethan quickly headed out. The streets of Manhattan were busy as usual, but Ethan loved it. For him, the city's liveliness was symbolic of his dreams coming closer to reality. Upon arriving at the office, Ethan was warmly greeted by his new coworkers. They were friendly, enthusiastic, and full of energy. The modern and relaxed atmosphere of the office made Ethan feel confident that he was in the right place. He immediately immersed himself in his tasks, working with passion, and demonstrating his skills in digital marketing. In no time, Ethan made a positive, lasting impression. His manager praised him, his co-workers started relying on him, and he felt his confidence steadily grow. When lunchtime arrived, Ethan joined some of his new friends at a popular downtown restaurant frequented by young professionals. They laughed, shared stories, and enjoyed delicious food while looking out onto the bustling city streets. Day by day, Ethan increasingly enjoyed his metropolitan lifestyle. He frequently visited trendy cafes, bought the latest gadgets aggressively advertised online, and spent weekends trying new restaurants or attending concerts. He felt deeply satisfied with this new life, as if everything he had ever dreamed of was now right in front of him. Yet, behind all the joy and happiness, Ethan unknowingly began developing a small habit. Each time he opened his wallet to buy something he didn't truly need, a little voice inside reminded him it was just a small reward for his hard work. Ethan continued to ignore that quiet warning, convincing himself that as long as next month's paycheck arrived, everything would be fine. Unbeknownst to Ethan, something was lurking behind that seemingly harmless habit, something slowly but surely creeping into his seemingly perfect life. Several months passed quickly, and Ethan grew increasingly comfortable with his new life. His routine was now filled with activities that always seemed interesting. Every morning, he started his day with an expensive latte from his favorite coffee shop before heading to the office. On weekends, he and his friends visited trendy places popular on social media. However, one morning at the beginning of the month, Ethan woke up to constant notifications from his phone. He saw several short messages from his bank reminding him of overdue credit card bills. With a slight sigh, he tried to ignore them, reassuring himself that this month's paycheck would surely cover everything. Yet, throughout the day at work, those messages kept resurfacing in his mind, making Ethan slightly uneasy. By noon, he discreetly checked his account balance and discovered that his savings were much lower than he had expected. Ethan began wondering where all his money had gone, but once again, he calmed himself down, believing that he still had things under control. That evening after work, Ethan felt he needed a distraction to ease his anxiety. He walked into an electronics store offering significant discounts. Without thinking much, he bought the latest premium headset, convincing himself he needed it to support his creativity-demanding job. But when Ethan returned to his apartment and saw his bank balance getting even lower, worry once again crept into his heart. He tried convincing himself that this was just a minor issue that could be resolved next month. That night, he didn't sleep as soundly as usual, though he continued pretending everything was fine. Days passed by, and Ethan began experiencing discomfort he had never felt before. He started counting down the days until his next paycheck, something he'd never done before. Although he continued to appear cheerful in front of his co-workers, Ethan quietly started avoiding dinners and gatherings with friends, using the excuse of being busy or tired. He knew his finances were nearly depleted. Yet Ethan remained unwilling to face the reality that something was fundamentally wrong with his financial management. He chose to ignore the issue, hoping that next month would fix everything. Unaware, he didn't realize this small habit was gradually forming a troubling pattern, a ripple slowly growing into a large wave threatening to disrupt the stability of his life. Day by day passed, yet Ethan's financial situation wasn't improving, it was steadily worsening. He began feeling suffocated each time he received an email or notification from his bank. Often, he had to silence the notifications just to avoid the waves of anxiety that overwhelmed him. One bright afternoon, Ethan sat with his co-workers at a cafe near the office. Although he smiled and joined in their jokes as usual, his mind was elsewhere. He felt deeply uncomfortable knowing there were just a few dollars left in his bank account. When the waiter placed the bill on their table, Ethan's heart raced instantly. He silently hoped someone else would volunteer to pay this time, but his friends remained busy chatting. With his face slightly flushed in embarrassment, Ethan slowly took out his credit card, praying the transaction would be approved. Each passing second felt painfully slow, until finally, the payment went through. Ethan breathed a sigh of relief, though his heart remained uneasy. He started realizing that his life now depended more on his credit card than actual savings. The following day brought another wave of bad news. Ethan received a notice from his bank, reminding him that he was already 2 months behind on his credit card payments. Frustrated, Ethan crumpled the letter in his hand. At work, he found it increasingly difficult to concentrate, continuously haunted by thoughts of debt and financial pressures. His co-workers began noticing Ethan's increasingly withdrawn behavior. They asked if he was okay, but he always responded with a forced smile, insisting that he was fine, just a little tired. Ashamed to admit his financial troubles, Ethan chose silence and withdrew further from his friends. Every night, Ethan lay in bed staring blankly at the ceiling. He kept pondering how he ended up in this situation, replaying past decisions and small moments when he purchased items he never truly needed. Then, one morning, Ethan received a call from his manager requesting a private meeting. Ethan's heart pounded anxiously, a sense of dread overcoming him. He knew his performance at work had declined significantly over recent weeks. A haunting question surfaced in his mind: could this be the end of the career he'd long dreamed of? With heavy steps and a tightening chest, Ethan walked towards his manager's office, unsure of what awaited him behind that door. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, leave a comment, and subscribe to help this channel grow. Thank you. The door to the manager's office slowly opened, revealing his supervisor's serious expression. As Ethan nervously sat down in front of him, a sinking feeling told him that something unpleasant was about to happen. His heart raced as the manager fixed him with a sharp gaze before finally speaking. His manager explained that Ethan's performance had drastically declined lately, deadlines weren't being met, and his creativity seemed diminished compared to before. Ethan listened silently, his trembling hands hidden under the table. Each of his manager's words felt like a harsh slap, abruptly waking him from the dream he'd been living. Ethan could only nod weakly, unable to offer any excuses. After the meeting, Ethan returned to his desk feeling devastated. Several co-workers glanced at him with questioning looks, but Ethan kept his head down, unwilling to show his vulnerability. At the end of office hours, Ethan left early, slowly walking along the city streets, feeling as though he had lost his way. When Ethan reached his apartment, he saw the pile of unpaid bills on his small table, clearly reminding him of his dire financial situation. He felt trapped, alone, and deeply ashamed of himself. That night, Ethan sat quietly on his small sofa, staring blankly out the window at the sparkling city lights that once brought him so much joy, but now seemed foreign and suffocating. Over the next few days, Ethan isolated himself from his friends. He was reluctant to leave his apartment, trying to calm his troubled mind. He attempted to calculate his debts and expenses, but the more he counted, the more his anxiety and panic grew. Ethan realized he was caught in a cycle that seemed almost impossible to break. He gradually lost the motivation and spirit to carry on with his daily routine. Waking up felt exhausting, going to work felt like punishment, and facing his cheerful coworkers became increasingly painful. He knew his life couldn't continue this way, yet Ethan had no idea how to begin fixing things. Then one quiet night, as he lay staring up at his ceiling, Ethan realized nothing would change unless he took immediate action. Amid exhaustion and desperation, he grabbed his phone and typed a search query with trembling hands. Slowly and cautiously, as if placing his last shred of hope in the answer that might appear, he typed, "How do I overcome personal financial problems?" That night, Ethan stayed awake until late. A faint glow from his phone screen illuminated his tired face as his fingers continued scrolling through articles about financial management. He read stories of people who successfully escaped the trap of consumer debt, learned methods for budgeting monthly income, and understood simple ways to manage spending. Though initially skeptical, Ethan began to feel a small glimmer of hope growing within him. He realized that to solve this problem, he needed to be honest with himself. The following day, Ethan purchased a small notebook, determined to record every dollar he spent from now on. Over the next few days, Ethan began applying the 50-30-20 budgeting method he discovered online. Carefully, he divided his paycheck, half went towards essentials, a portion for his wants, and the remainder to savings. At first, these steps felt extremely difficult. Turning down invitations from friends to hang out at expensive restaurants or resisting impulse purchases felt strange to him. Yet, he continually reminded himself that this was the only way out. At the office, Ethan's coworkers began noticing subtle changes in him. He seemed more serious, quieter, yet oddly calmer. Ethan started reducing his habit of buying expensive coffee every morning. He also brought his own homemade lunch, prepared the night before. Though some colleagues joked about this, Ethan merely smiled lightly, explaining he was trying something new. One by one, Ethan started paying off his mounting credit card bills. He even mustered the courage to negotiate with his bank for lighter installments on his debts. Although initially difficult, his determination and persistence slowly started showing results. Every time Ethan reduced his debt, he felt a sense of relief, as if part of the heavy burden had gradually lifted from his shoulders. However, Ethan's journey wasn't finished yet. One day, as he began feeling stable, a significant temptation returned. A gadget Ethan had long desired was now on sale with a massive discount. Ethan stood for a long time outside the electronics store, confusion once again tugging at him. He struggled deeply, wondering whether he'd fall back into his old habits or if he had truly changed. Hesitantly, Ethan stepped into the store, his heart pounding wildly, as if awaiting an answer to whether he had truly changed or if he would again fall into the same old trap. As Ethan stepped into the electronics store, his eyes instantly locked onto the gadget he'd always dreamed of owning. The tempting discount made it even harder for him to think clearly. Voices inside his head argued fiercely, torn between giving in to immediate desire and staying committed to breaking his old habits. The minutes passed slowly for Ethan as he stood motionless in front of the display shelf, his hand almost touching the item. Suddenly, vivid memories flooded his mind, the stress from piling bills, persistent phone calls from the bank, and the disappointed gaze of his manager. These memories struck him like a hard slap, jolting Ethan back to reality. With a heavy sigh, Ethan slowly withdrew his hand, turned around, and left the store without buying anything. He exited quickly, as though escaping something that nearly threatened all the progress he'd made. Once outside, Ethan took a deep breath of fresh air, feeling a sense of relief mixed with pride in successfully resisting temptation. In the days following that incident, Ethan grew even more determined in his efforts to fix his finances. He became accustomed to living frugally, meticulously recording every small expense. His productivity at work gradually returned, and the enthusiasm he'd previously lost now came back stronger than ever. One afternoon, Ethan courageously reached out to a mentor well known for his financial wisdom. Their meeting at a small cafe became a valuable moment for Ethan. The mentor patiently listened to his story and offered practical advice to maintain consistency and financial stability moving forward. Later that night, in his now more comfortable apartment, Ethan carefully crafted a comprehensive financial plan. He pinned a sheet of paper listing his financial goals onto his bedroom wall, serving as a daily reminder and motivation every morning when he woke up. Ethan's days began to look brighter again, but he knew his struggle wasn't fully over. Each day brought new challenges, each step tempted him to slip back into his old habits. Ethan understood that he needed to stay strong to avoid falling back. Amidst his newfound optimism, Ethan received a brief email one morning from his manager, asking him to come immediately to his office. Curiosity mixed with anxiety once again crept into Ethan's thoughts. Would this meeting finally bring the good news he'd been waiting for, or would it once again become a painful reminder? With a racing heart and countless questions, Ethan quickly headed towards his manager's office. When Ethan arrived at his manager's office, the door opened slowly, revealing the warm, welcoming expression of his supervisor, who was sitting and smiling. Ethan cautiously took a seat, his emotions a mix of hope and nervousness, silently praying this meeting would bring good news. Without hesitation, his manager began speaking. He said that lately, he had observed a significant improvement in Ethan's performance. He expressed genuine appreciation, acknowledging that Ethan had successfully recovered and shown remarkable dedication. His manager even offered Ethan greater and more important responsibilities within the company. Hearing this, relief, gratitude, and pride all blended inside Ethan's heart. As Ethan left the office, he felt as though he'd been given a second chance to truly live a better life. Over the next several days, Ethan enthusiastically embraced his new role. Colleagues who once questioned his changed attitude now respected him even more for his positive transformation. Financially, Ethan was close to fully paying off his debts. He maintained disciplined financial habits, even beginning small investments for the future. Slowly but surely, Ethan experienced a calmer life, free from the anxiety and heavy stress he used to feel at the end of each month. One calm weekend, Ethan returned to his favorite cafe, enjoying a cup of black coffee as he observed the bustling New York streets that now felt comfortably familiar. Ethan smiled softly, recalling the winding journey he had traveled to reach this point. He knew his struggle wasn't entirely over yet, but felt confident he was finally on the right path towards a brighter future. As Ethan sipped his coffee, his phone vibrated with a notification. A reunion invitation from his old friends back in his hometown suddenly appeared. Ethan paused briefly, pondering whether he was truly ready to face his past and share all the changes he'd experienced along the way. With a meaningful look, Ethan tightly gripped his phone, realizing life had taught him many valuable lessons. He understood that now was the time to step forward, not just to confront his past, but also to embrace a future full of hope. After enduring many struggles, Ethan finally began experiencing stability in his life. One day, a message arrived in his personal email inbox. He opened it with curiosity and a hint of nervousness. After reading the content, Ethan froze in astonishment. A large technology company he had dreamed of joining since college had invited him for an interview for the position of Senior Digital Marketing Specialist. Excitedly, Ethan accepted the interview invitation. He knew this was a rare opportunity, one that had once seemed completely out of reach due to his financial struggles and previously uncontrollable lifestyle. When the interview day arrived, Ethan presented himself confidently and thoroughly prepared. He answered each question thoughtfully and convincingly, clearly demonstrating the maturity he had gained after overcoming the challenges that once nearly brought him down. A few days later, Ethan received the call informing him that he had been accepted for the position. On his first day at the new office, Ethan stood proudly in front of the impressive skyscraper building. As he stepped inside, he realized this was the dream he had kept buried deep within himself, a dream nearly lost due to poor habits and past mistakes. A few weeks later, Ethan was invited to speak at a seminar on financial management for young professionals in New York. Standing before a large audience, Ethan sincerely shared his journey of failure, recovery, and how he finally achieved his once-forgotten dreams. As he stood in front of the attentive audience, Ethan understood clearly that every difficulty he'd faced had given him the strength to achieve what he wanted. Now, Ethan knew that no dream was ever too big, as long as one had the courage and determination to change and learn from every mistake along the way. The moral value is everyone makes mistakes at some point in life, just like Ethan, who initially failed at managing his finances and fell into a cycle of overspending. However, It's not our mistakes or problems that define us, but rather our courage to face reality, learn from those mistakes, and take concrete steps toward change. Ethan succeeded in achieving his once-buried dreams because he overcame his bad habits, resisted temporary temptations, and built self-discipline to manage his life more wisely. From Ethan's story, we learn that true success and stability don't come easily. They're the results of perseverance, determination, and a strong commitment to growing through every challenge. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, leave a comment, and subscribe to help this channel grow. Thank you.